right? I'll say this again: your perception creates your positioning creates your pricing. I think a lot of thought leaders do it backwards. They think by increasing their pricing, they will increase their perception and positioning. No, if you increase your perception, it will change your positioning. Or if you increase your positioning, it will change your perception. If you change your perception, it will change your pricing. So the moment they saw me on platforms, and I was talking about the fact that, here I am speaking at this platform that, with global thought leaders and blah, 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 blah. Guess what? My positioning went high, perception followed, pricing followed automatically.
Oh, no.
So to be honest, I wish I could tell you it was something deeper, that I wrote this amazing chat sheet. I didn't do I just said that like humans. It's not about your message. So if you have a great message and there's no market, you'll be broke. If you have a market and you have the wrong message, you'll be broke. So you've got to find.
Welcome once again to Growth is Personal Podcast, your number one podcast on personal growth and development. It's a pleasure once again to have this conversation. For those of us who are going to be joining on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you also leave a comment about today's episode, because it's going to be mind-blowing. The guest I've been following him for quite a while. I remember the picture I sent to him, of the time we met in a conference, and how he has been of great impact to my life and my journey. So I'm going to be having a phenomenal conversation. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, also ensure that you give us a follow, like the podcast, share with your friends. It helps us get that visibility to those who don't know about this podcast. So the guest I have today is none other than Steve Harris. Steve Harris is a management consultant with a distinguished career spanning 18 years. He's globally recognized as a trusted authority in the fields of life coaching and business strategy, and holds the esteemed title of UN YFP Young Ambassador for Peace. Steve's expertise extends beyond borders, as he is highly regarded as one of Africa's leading business coaches. He has the privilege of designing, managing, and facilitating numerous management and leadership retreats for prestigious organizations across Africa, the Middle East, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States. Steve Harris is renowned for his expertise as a turnaround expert, business strategist, and inspirational corporate activator. His contributions has consistently added incredible value to the effectiveness, productivity, and ultimately the bottom line of his client's organization. Steve has also written 3 books, from college dropouts to corporate sellouts, from friends to fiance. This one is a good one. How to get him to want you without letting him know you want him to want you. Wow. And Honey, Why Are We Poor? These books have sold over 30,000 physical copies. He's an in-demand speaker across many parts of Africa, the United Kingdom, and the United States, where his message of purpose and mastering the business of your talent resonates with people of all races, social status, irrespective of their age. Through his signature business programs, Mastering the Business of Your Talent, Steve guided over 550 small business owners to generate an impressive revenue of over $60 million within a 6-week time frame in 2022. Over the past year alone, his strategic interventions have enabled his clients to generate more than $45 million in revenue. Wow, that's a mouthful. I mean, no one else is more qualified right now to discuss what we're going to be talking about today. So Steve, welcome to the show. Please give us a little bit of intro on what I did not read in your profile.
I was hoping you weren't going to read it all. I mean, to be honest, I was like, you can stop already. But hey, thank you for having me. It's an honor and privilege to be here, man.
Yes. Thank you for honoring our invitation. We're just gonna go right in, Steve. I know you have a lot to offer, and if you're not following him on Instagram, please go check him out. Steve Harris on Instagram, and I don't think you're not gonna regret it, because he shares a lot of information. So we're gonna start with monetizing your message. I want us to really delve into that topic. And first question I have for you, Steve, is what exactly is a message? And how did you identify your message?
All right. So first off, let me just quickly recap. It's Instagram is I am Steve Harris. I noticed you mentioned Steve Harris. Just look for I am Steve Harris. Just find the most good looking guy. That's me. Follow me, and that would be great. Yeah, but to your question about how you find your message and how I found mine, I think it was serendipity, to be honest. I recognize that everybody has a message based on their experiences and their life's journey. For me at the time, um, I had dropped out of school. You know, I schooled in Nigeria. I dropped out of school twice. And you know, for the Nigerian context, if you drop out of school once, you know, you're a failure. If you do it twice, you are in a class all by yourself. And so I had the misfortune, so to speak, to have, you know, dropped out of school twice. And it wasn't because I wasn't academically gifted. I think I struggled with, well, my first school, which was the University of Benin, where I was admitted to study industrial math, which should, you know, to be honest, I had no business studying because I don't like math. I don't like numbers. The only numbers I care about are the numbers that I get paid. You know what I mean? Those are the numbers that matter. But long story short, I got kicked out of school in my third year. I had a lot of issues with my lecturers, my professors, and I got kicked out of school. Then the second time um, after that whole debacle, I try to get back into school because, you know, because we're both Nigerian. Well, you know,
Mhm.
you're Canadian now. I'm sorry, you're Canadian. I'm Nigerian.
Oh, Nigeria, Canadian.
Right. So we need to make that distinction. So I mean, for those of us who are from Nigerian descent and African stock, we do know that our parents put a lot of pressure on us to be successful academically. And when you don't do that, you know, it kind of gives a bit of shame. And so when I got kicked out of the University of Benin, I got into another school, Madonna University, somewhere in the eastern part of the country, just because I just needed to get into school. And long story short, without going into details, I spent about 7 months there, and I kicked myself out this time. I was like, I'm done, can't do this anymore. But that became my message because initially it wasn't because I'd failed. Even though I had failed academically, it did take some time before my message crystallized and developed because you could be going through the process that is your message. Sometimes I think people want to get to the other side before they share their message. Sometimes
Mm,
your message is being manufactured in process, even
mm,
though you're not aware that that is ultimately going to be your messaging. But I think after a while, I dropped out of school, had a few ups and downs here and there, and inevitably, eventually, got the privilege to be mentored and guided and started a career as a consultant and inevitably a motivational speaker. So I think at the time where I had come out of the other side, so to speak, I had already started gaining some corporate success working with consulting firms, working with a consulting firm, helping organizations become profitable. And I started getting some success. But I recognized that um, my message came because I noticed that a lot of seemingly young, upcoming professionals and executive professionals and corporations were seen to be, they didn't have a sense of purpose. They were laissez-faire, they were nonchalant in their approach to work and business. And I was like, look at all y'all people. Are you guys kidding me? Like, you have the first class and the 2-1. I have no class and I'm doing way better than you are. I have a sense of purpose. How come you don't have a sense of purpose? And I think my frustration with the fact that a lot of young people at the time didn't have a sense of purpose or destiny and seemed to just be cruising and coasting through life made me very frustrated. And I think I began to share my message about how I dropped out of school and how
mm,
today, or at that time, I started becoming a corporate success, how I had discovered my giftings and my abilities, and that began to chart the direction of my life. So literally that became my purpose. I didn't plan, I didn't have this great strategic 10-year plan to say, okay, this is what I'm going to be sharing. This is what it just happened. Life happened, but I decided that I was going to happen to life instead. So that's what happened.
awesome. I like the fact that you shared that most people tend to wait till the end or when they get to the other side of their journey or their of their situation before they begin to recognize that they have a message. I think it's very
Right.
important to highlight that because you can also share your message when you're still in the process.
Oh,
Am I
absolutely.
is
Oh,
that
absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I see that a lot. Oh, I'm not. I don't think I'm qualified yet. And there's this almost like a stigma that, oh, I have to wait till I am perfect, right? Like that my story is all clean and I have been able to go from A to B before I can share my message. But you're also sharing with us now that it's possible that you can begin to share your message while you're still in the process.
Yeah,
Now,
like if forgive
yeah.
me before you can say, I just want to just touch something on this to make it really practical. So many years ago, let's see, I've been married 15 years. So this probably was about maybe 17 or 18 years ago. And I got invited to speak at a relationship seminar, um, particularly focused on women, married women. And at the time, I wasn't married. So, to be honest, I wasn't supposed to be the speaker. My mentor, Feladro Toye, was actually the speaker, but he wasn't able to make it. So he sent me to go represent him. And I remember speaking at this conference, and the audience was filled with married women, divorcees, people in their different, levels of relationship, singles, married, and so on and so forth. So I had to speak to them on, I think on something about having a successful marriage or something like that. And it was such a hit. It was such a great message. By the time I was done, people were, metaphorically swinging from chandeliers. And then it was time for Q&A, and the first person, a lady, took the microphone, and I knew it was going to go south the moment she started by saying young man. So she was like, young man. I was like, this is not going to go well. She says, I have a question for you. I'm like, yes ma'am. She says, are you married? And
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm not. She says, well, because I noticed that you don't have a ring on your finger.
Hmm.
Presentation was great. But your talking theory, since you're not married, perhaps when you've been married for a couple of years and you have a couple of years under your belt, you can come back and give this pitch. Because right now, what you're talking about is just theory. You've not experienced it. I was like, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, this is,
Hmm.
and everybody was like, oh, he's not even married, he's not even married. So, it was almost like, oh, he's just talking stuff he doesn't understand. I was like, sweet baby Jesus, what am I going to say? And thankfully, God gives answers.
Hmm.
And I asked her a question. I was like, so, are you married? She said, yes. I said, do you mind me asking you a few more questions? She said, shoot. So I asked, are you married? She says, yes. Do you have kids? She says, yes. Did you have your kids in the hospital or at home? I knew statistically most women would rather go to the hospital. So she says, I had my kids in the hospital. I was like, great. Um, the doctor that attended to you and facilitated your procedure, was he male or female? I know statistically there are more male doctors than female. So
Hmm.
she said he was a male doctor. So I said, so what you're telling me is you trusted a man who's never been pregnant to deliver your babies. She was like, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not, I said,
Oh.
hold on, man. Just wait a second. Hold on. Because this man has never had contractions. He's never, had a pregnancy test. He doesn't have a
Hmm.
period. He
Hmm.
doesn't know what it's like to be a woman.
Hmm.
And you trusted a man who has no experience being pregnant to deliver your babies. Is that what you did? She tried to wriggle out, but she was like, yes, that's why that's what I did. So I asked her, I said, do you know why you did that? She said, no. I said, the reason you did it was at the points of delivery, you were not looking for a woman who has experience being pregnant. You're looking for a professional who has expertise in delivering babies.
Come on.
And I said, I don't have experience being married, but I have expertise in helping families have successful relationships. And that's what gives me credence to stand here. And when I said that, dropped the mic, the whole place scattered. But I know I'm not that smart. That was an inspired answer from God, clearly. But
Hmm.
so that's to encourage someone who's listening to think that, well, maybe when I succeed, then I can talk about business. Or maybe when I'm married, I can talk about relationships. Or maybe when I have kids, I can talk about children. The
Hmm.
world isn't going to pay you for your experiences. They're going to pay you for your expertise.
Wow.
So you need to recognize that. Yeah,
The world is not going to pay you for just your experiences, but going to pay you for your expertise.
absolutely.
Hmm. That's so expertise and experience. So let's dive deep into that a little bit, because what we see today is that people tend to undermine their expertise
Right.
in the sense that, well, I have expertise, but I don't have experience in
Right.
application, so to speak. So they shy away from sharing their message or adding value. So how can they get out of that? Let me use the word rabbit hole of constantly building expertise and not showing up to deliver value because they haven't been able to either get the opportunity to experience or do or deliver on that expertise, or just using the expertise to help people,
Yeah.
become better or stuff like that. So how can people get out of the expertise and begin to, get some
Right.
experience?
Right. So I'll answer it this way. I tend to watch a little bit of football, soccer, not American football, like real football, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've recognized is not all coaches were professional football players, and not all
Hmm.
professional football players become coaches,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So sometimes we would think that, oh, the best coaches are the ones who are the best footballers. No, that's not the case.
Hmm.
Many times, some of the best coaches, like Jose Mourinho, right? He wasn't a pretty good footballer. I think he barely played a season and realized that wasn't his destiny, even though his father was a goalkeeper. But today he is undisputedly one of the greatest managers of all time,
Hmm.
right? What did he learn? He learned the expertise of what it was required to become a coach, right? And then took that expertise and began to get practical experience by coaching teams, right? Now, I say this to say that even though you're an expert at something, you've got to show that you have a track record of performance in helping other people get those kinds of results. So it doesn't help if I went to medical school as an example, but I've never give you an example. I've never gone into the hospital to help someone through a procedure or something or the other. Do you get what I mean? So yes, I could be a doctor as an example, right? Even if so, let me tie it together. So I could be a doctor, right? But I need to have some sort of experience, especially if I'm going to be talking to people about medicine to some degree. I need to have some experience to be able to say, well, even if I'm not, so to speak, practicing, I do understand a little bit about this, that, and the other concerning the results I'm going to help you give. Because it's very possible that you can be an expert in something, and you're helping people get results in something else. So, for example, let's use you. Let's say, for example, you're a medical doctor. I'm not sure if you are or were. But let's say you're a medical doctor. Um, Even though, so to speak, you may not be practicing now, you have experiences with podcasts and coaching, as an example, right?
Hmm.
I can look behind you to see a host of people you've helped, through your coaching interventions. The problem is people talk about expertise without having proof of the work they've helped other people do, which is
Hmm.
why, from a Nigerian context, particularly those who are Nigerians that are listening to this, we talk about, for example, motivational speakers talking about aspire to perspire. It's a derogatory term that Nigerians use for thought leaders. And they say that all they talk about is inspiration and motivation because they don't have the track record of performance, right?
Hmm.
So, give you an example. You read my profile and my bio. So I can say, for example, I'm a business coach, and every Tom, Dick, and I'm not going to say Harry because you can't use my name in vain. You know what I'm saying? But everybody, for example, can be a coach. Do
Hmm.
you get what I mean? The barriers to entry are next to none, but everyone can talk about it. The fact that they're coaches. But did you notice what you talked about? You talked about the fact that I'd helped 500 and so odd customers or clients generate over $60 million in revenue, or my clients this or last year had generated over $45 million in revenue. That's experience. That's proof. Do you get
Hmm.
what I mean? So it's just not enough to be able to say, for example, I'm a coach or I'm a this and a that. People are still going to look back to say, hey, okay, yes, this is what you say you are, but who have you helped? Right. And that's the proof of your expertise, who you've helped.
Hmm. I'm going to come to that, developing that experience or whatever portfolio or practice would help you engage with your audience or clients. We'll come to that package in
Right.
a short moment. But I want us to talk about what are the common misconception that people have about monetizing their message, monetizing the experiences that they've had. What are the common misconception, and how can, in your experience, and how have you been able to help your client overcome them?
That's a great question. So I think the greatest misconception towards monetizing your message is believing that because you've got a great message, you're going to make money. That's the biggest misconception ever. I tell my clients that it's not about your message, it's about your market. And I'm going to say this again, it's not
Wow.
about your message. People don't care about your message. It's about the market. So a lot of coaches, thought leaders, experts think that, oh, I've got this great story that's a struggle, a success story, or grass a great story, and people would love that messaging and automatically subscribe to whatever I'm offering. People don't care. It's not about your message, it's about your market. So I'll explain. My second book, Honey, Why We Pour, How to Get Him to Want You Without Letting Him Know You Want Him to Want You. I had no idea of writing. I had no plans of writing that book, but how did that come about? I had a conversation with a friend of mine at the time, a lady who was very interested in this particular guy, but he'd friend zoned her. And for whatever reason, she thought that I could help, so she asked me what she could do to get out of the friend zone. Now, being a former bad boy and now a good guy, I could easily tell her these are some of the things that fellas look out for. And so I told her quite confidently that, well, in about 2 weeks, he's going to be eating out of your hand. So let me know when he does, about 2 weeks. About a week later, she reaches out and she's like, oh my God, Steve, it's like magic, like somebody just put a hex on him. This guy's just totally, he's seeing me different. And then she blurts out, you should write a book. Now, when she said that, I was like, that's interesting. But I didn't go immediately to write a book. So you know what I did? I went on Twitter. I was very active, X now. I was quite active on Twitter back in the day. And I figured, okay, what did I tell her? And I started tweeting on the hashtag at the time, From Friends to Fiance, and tweeting very practical things that I figured that women could do to get out of the friend zone. And because I'm a little bit, my brand is part provocative and controversial. So I'm not the ruler cookie cutter kind of guy. I'm a little left of center or right of center. But I'm usually somewhere near the extreme. And so I wasn't talking about, no sex before marriage and all those things. I recognize that my brand, please allow me to use this example. Jesus talks about the fact that, when he has 100 sheep and one goes astray, he goes after the one and returns them to the 99. I recognize in this generation, 99 of the sheep have gone outside, only one is inside. Do you get what I mean? So I feel like I'm sent to the 99. So I'm not trying to be somebody's pastor. I'm not trying to be someone's moral agent. But I started tweeting things, for example, to say, you guys had sex and he didn't call you back. This is what you need to do. Those sorts of conversations that seemed like, oh my God, we can't talk about this. How can you be talking about it? But it was what people wanted. And I recognized when I started tweeting that, I started trending at the time in Lagos, and then I started trending in Nigeria. I had over 600 followers in about an hour. And when I looked at the analytics and the data, I said, there's a market here. And bro, I then decided, okay, you know what? Let me go and write this book. And then I wish I had a copy. I don't. I was very deliberate, again, understanding biopsychology, because I was talking about a topic that helps women get men, so to speak. I felt like the women will have to deal with some sense of embarrassment. So I wanted to write a book that women could hide in other books. So you can literally put I wish I had a copy here, but you could put that book inside your Bible and nobody will be reading that book. That book fits inside your purse. I wanted it to be palm size. Then I wanted it to be very simple, dumbed down. I dropped out of school, man, so it's got to be simple, right? So I wanted it to be very simple, very explanatory, nothing too, I would use the word deep for the lack of a better term. So it's palm size. And in a month, I sold over 1,000. I sold 1,000 copies in a month, and I had to reprint 5 times. So that particular book has sold 5,000 copies. Physical copies. Don't forget about ebooks. Now, I say this to say, it's not about your message. It's about your market. So if you have a great message and there's no market, you'll be broke. If you have a market and you have the wrong message, you'll be broke. So you've got to find the market first, then the right message for that market you're trying to reach. Do you get what I mean? And that's the biggest misconception that I figure a lot of experts make.
This is a master class on its own. I want to dwell on this a little bit.
This is it. This is it. You're all getting this for free.
Oh, I think I'm going to make this particular episode a premium.
We should put some money behind my name. There we go.
But I want because you said something very important because we are very emotional to the message that we lose sight of the market. Now, if you want to, and you talked about bias psychology. I mean, you dropped some gems there, and I want to take you on that market. Now,
Right.
and you also said get the market first, and then look for the right message to that market. Now, if you had to break down the market into a funnel, what would be the layer? If you to break it to a three funnel segment on how to identify that market, what would that be?
I'm not. I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to break it into a single layer. Forget about three. Let's go with one.
Okay.
You're looking for a hungry audience. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a hungry audience. I'll give you an example. Um, so a couple of years ago, I still am, was very passionate about helping. I think by the success of my book, I recognized that there was another market because sometimes you drill down. It's like you have crude oil, and then you recognize that in crude oil there's gasoline, there's kerosene, there's diesel. You just keep drilling, you start hitting oil in different areas. So by the success of that book, I recognized that there was now another market of women who needed relationship coaching. So they've gotten the book, but now they needed relationship coaching. Now this time I didn't take my advice of market first, message last. I was excited by the euphoria of my book, and I just went in blindly. So I started teaching women on Instagram. I have this thing called Love University, and I would teach women practically, like I mentioned, you guys had sex, he didn't call you back, this is what you're going to do. Just seemingly controversial topics, but at that time I was getting thousands of views and thousands of people watching live. And because it was so successful, I figured, okay, you know what? One of my rules of social media, and I'm sure you know this, of course, is don't build your house on rented land. So because I knew that I had the platform on social media, on Instagram, I felt like I needed to build a community where I could have their data and I could mentor them outside of social media. So I offered something for free. They joined my community called Love University. And I had, I think at the highest, maybe 860 odd women that I was coaching every other day. And it was fantastic. Lovely women, wonderful community and platform. And one day I had this eureka moment, but wait a second, you've got a captive audience of 860 odd women. What if you sold something to them? So I figured, okay, you know what? I've got this captive, audience of women. They always ask me pretty much the similar types of questions. What if I could create some sorts of audio, MP3, or teaching video that can just help them, answer a couple of the questions that keep recurring? And I think I put it at a ridiculous sum. Maybe it was $10, $10 or something like that. Bro, I'm Steve Harris, right? So I need you to put some respect on my name for a second. Can you guess how many women subscribed to that video? How many people paid for that video? Just give me a random number if you think.
Out of 160 women?
No, out of 860 women. 860 women.
860 women. Wow,
Yeah,
that'll be 300.
There we go. 300, not too shabby. I hate to break it to you guys. I got zero. Nobody. Diddly squat. Nada. Not a single woman paid. Now, initially, I was like, oh, what's going on? I thought these women, maybe they didn't see it. So I muted the group. Like, listen, maybe y'all didn't see it. And all the chitter chat and the pandemonium, y'all didn't see this. So, I'm muting the group for a second. See, I have people have been asking me this question. I've recorded this video. Check it out. It's $10. Y'all can get it. And I'm expecting to see, notifications, sale, sale, sale. And nobody buys. And I get so upset. I am upset. I'm livid. I don't say nothing. And, I think I don't talk in the group for like 3 days. The ladies are talking, Uncle Steve, where are you? Where's Uncle Steve? In my mind, I'm like, who's your uncle? Bitch, who's your uncle? Like, this is why you're single. I was so hurt. From that point, my heart was no longer, I was just hurt. And I don't think I ever really went back to the group. Now, after a couple of months, I recognized, once my emotions were sorted and, logic came back, I asked the question, why didn't anybody buy? And the answer very simply was, I did not have a desperate market. And I'll explain. The demographic of the women I was speaking to at the time, and please forgive me if you're a woman listening to this or watching this, I'm not trying to shame, I'm not trying to gaslight, I'm not trying to be insultive. I'm not trying to be chauvinistic. I'm just telling you the way statistics go at the moment. So I do apologize in advance, and I hope you're not offended. So I noticed that at the time, the demographic of women, their ages were about 20 to 26. That age, so to speak, a couple of years ago, were not desperate. Their issue was, Steve, I have many men. Which man should it be? Their issue was not, Steve, I don't have a man. How can I get a man? I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I recognized that I was speaking to an audience that wasn't hungry. And so I paused and I said, okay, you know what? Where's the hungry audience? And please no disrespect if you fall into this category. I'm not trying to be rude or offensive. And I recognized that women over the age of 35 have a sense of desperation. For them, they feel like time is ticking, the biological clock is ticking. You know, their younger ones are getting married, their friends have gotten married, they probably even have kids. They're now thinking about freezing their eggs, they're thinking about being side chicks, second wives, simply because there are not enough eligible men choosing that demographic. So once I realized that I had a category of, please allow the term, hungry, desperate women, right? I recognized that I could serve them. And the moment I put out the same contents, bro, perhaps under a different name, but the same contents targeted at this demographic, do you know what happened? Oversubscribed. I had over 1,000 women who paid me minimum $200 to coach them in a group. I'm not talking about one-on-ones, or I'm not talking about upsells. I'm just talking about women who feel like, okay, I just need a quick fix. And I got over 1,000 women who probably paid me, 200 quid at the very minimum, upsells exclusive. So what am I saying? If you don't find a hungry, desperate market, no matter how exciting your message is, you're going to be broke.
You're going to be broke. Wow. And that's the reality that we find ourselves, especially in this creator economy, where we have so many people now who have message and who want to create and want to do stuff, but they get discouraged because nobody's buying, nobody's subscribing, right? Desperate market. I want us to go into, you mentioned something around building community. You had, a group, and how did you go about building a community that understands your message and want to even be part of it? Because it's one thing to say, yes, I have followers, I have, this large followers. It's one thing to be able to transfer them to a group where they're willing to move into. So what is the significance of having that community, and how did you get them to buy into join in?
Well, the most important thing is to realize that your community is about them. It's not about you. You don't want to build a tribe around your ego. You're building a tribe around their shared experiences, their shared struggles, and inevitably their shared successes, right? So I have the community. I still have that community. Well, this new community of older women, so to speak, or mature women. Can I use the word mature women? And I coach them and I guide them based on their experiences. So it's not about the Steve Harris fan club. It's about them, right? And for me, I recognize, I said to you at the beginning that, don't build your house on rented land. We've seen it several times where Instagram or Twitter, well, it doesn't happen with Twitter, it happens a lot more with Instagram and WhatsApp as an example, where there's a glitch and people can't access their platforms, right? Oh, Instagram, you can't access your Instagram, it's glitching, you can't see your post, whatever the case may be. And you need to recognize that these platforms are like waves. They would ebb and flow. They would peak and they would crash. A couple of years ago, the most thriving social platform was High Five. Ain't nobody got a High Five account no more. At a time, it was MySpace. I don't know nobody who's using MySpace. And inevitably, Instagram and co will go the way of the dinosaurs. Facebook is great. I can't remember the last time I was on Facebook. Facebook is probably where my mom hangs out these days, but it ebbs and flows. And Instagram inevitably will follow. Snapchat will follow. All these, platforms will follow. So we get so excited about the fact that I, for example, have maybe over 160,000 followers on Instagram. It's a good ego metric, but how many of those people do I have access to? How much of their data do I have? Because I recognize that this is the game. While you think it's social media, the platforms recognize it's data mining. That's what they're doing. So you think you're in the business, you think that Facebook is in the business of social media. No, they're not. They're in the business of data and information. So they've got all your information. They can track you. Who are you tracking? So what I do is I then create either freebies that people can opt into, because I know that I want to create my own mailing list and ultimately have my own community that I have access to. So I play this game where I say, and this is for everyone who's listening, this is my question to you. Do you have 5% of your followers in some sort of community? If you don't, you, my friend, need to get that sorted. You must have at least 5% of your followers in some sort of community, either an email list where you have their data, or some sort of group. Facebook groups are great, but you don't have their data. And when I mean their data, I'm talking about name, email address, phone number. That way you can target them. Do you get what I mean? Right. So for example, I have an email list for one of my platforms that has 32,000 people. How did I do it? I offered something for free. It could be a free webinar, a free ebook. People want free stuff. And I segmented those lists based on, so for my relationship list, I probably have maybe like 10,000 people. For my business list, I have 20 something thousand people. And so I have that ecosystem of people whose shared struggles or successes I can relate to, and I can guide them, along the way. And so that's what I believe that a lot of us need to be thinking about. So don't build your house on rented land. The owners will take it eventually. And what's the point building a million, 100,000 followers in MySpace, and then you no longer use MySpace, and then they migrate. Everybody's now on TikTok. Instagram is great, but people are moving to TikTok. So the trend is the cloud is going to just keep moving. Your job is to be taking the customers, just keep taking them, keep getting their data, put in your own ecosystem, and then serve them. And don't get too attached to any platform.
Great. Now, what would you say some of the practical step if you want to start monetizing your message today, even with limited resources? What can you start to do? And you've mentioned some of them around building an email list. How do you what practical step can you use to build your to begin to monetize your message? And are there formats or systems that are consistently be seen as profitable? Right. I know some people have monetized their message into a speaking, professional speaking, where they're getting booked, day in, day out, year in, year out. What other format exists that people can begin to leverage now to monetize their message?
There are different platforms. I mean, for example, podcasting is one way you can monetize your message. Clearly, you can charge subscription services, webinars, webcasts, teleseminars, all sorts of ways, speaking gigs, coaching gigs. All those ways are different platforms to monetize your message. But I think, to be honest, all you need is one sale. That's what gives credence to whether your message is being received. What you need is one sale. I see a lot of thought leaders who I've coached, and they tell me, Steve, I'm putting in the content, putting in the work, and nobody is buying, and nobody's buying, and nobody's buying. And I'm reminded, I don't know if you ever saw this, but a couple of years ago, Linda Ikeji, well, for those of you who don't know Linda Ikeji, she's a Nigerian blogger, perhaps Nigeria's biggest blogger. And she had posted something, I think it was maybe her 10th year anniversary. And she said that she posted a throwback picture of her very first post on her blog. She said it took, bro, listener, it took 1 year of posting every day to get the first comment. Oh, you don't hear me what I'm saying. It took 1 year of posting content every day, not to get her first customer, to get her first comment. I don't know about you. People are fragile these days. If you post something on Instagram now and nobody likes it, you get offended, you delete it.
Did it?
Right. If I'm Steve Harris. I'm a pretty big deal. I've posted stuff that I thought was deep and was such loaded content, and very few people, if any, liked it. I've hosted webinars. My very first webinar I was teaching on financial fitness. It was 1,000 naira, which I don't know what that is in dollars right now, but it was 1,000 naira, not a lot of money, right? People have been asking me, "Oh, Steve, I need to get my money right. Can you do so?" So I created this thing, put it at $1,000. I got nobody. Then literally, I was talking to my wife that day, and I remember saying to her, "If I could get just one person paid, I'll go on with this webinar," because I felt it failed. Like I'd market, I pitched it consistently. I didn't even get a single, payment, and I just told her if I get one person, because I was depressed, like that maybe I should just cancel. I'm just gonna, end the webinar. So there's no point. And I said if I could get one person who paid, I'd go through with it. And literally 30 minutes to the webinar, I get a payment, and I go to the living room to tell her, "Hey, yo, babe, somebody has paid." And then I realized she had paid for it. And she said, "You told
Wow.
me that if you get one person, you'd go through with it. So I've paid. Let's go." So I
Wow.
literally had to sit in the webinar and say, "Hey, everyone, welcome to the webinar. It's Steve Harris here. I hope you're here. Give me a comment. Give me a like." My wife is dropping comments. Woo, excited to be here. Just myself and my wife during this webinar. But here's the beautiful thing about it. By the time the webinar was done, even though I was feeling depressed, can you imagine? It was so bad that only my wife had to come on as a pity party thing, thingamajiggy. But because it was recorded, I decided to sell the replay at the time 5,000 naira. I got 20 people who paid for the replay.
Wow.
So I made nothing. I made a 1,000 naira during the live. I made 100 grand selling the replay. But I'm saying that all you need is one customer. And sometimes if it's not working, you've got to be honest with yourself and get advice. Get a coach. Get someone who sees the blind spot. Maybe there's something wrong with your messaging. Maybe there's something wrong with your positioning. Maybe there's something wrong with your brand and people don't believe you. Maybe you just need time and continued focused, efforts in the right direction before it converts. But that's one way you can go about it. But I always say to you, all you need is one.
One customer. Wow. And this is really inspiring to see the story of resilience, because we've seen a lot of times, even when I started this podcast, I remember in 2022, I launched out and we started, and I was like, what's going on? No one is subscribing. What's Spotify, and I kept going. At some point I was doing the solo episodes, right? And so I was at the point I was trying to reach out to some guests, and it was falling on deaf ears. Like, one person actually asked me, "Hey, what's your stats? How many downloads?" I'm like, okay. So at the point I said, you know what, I'm gonna just go all in. So I went solo episode. I think I did about 25 or so, and now I'm getting even people reaching out to be on the podcast. We became top 10 in Canada on personal development. So it's the story of resilience, right? Just keep going at it as long as you believe in it, right? So thank you for sharing that story, and it's also encouragement to those who have spouses, right? Encourage them.
Yes.
You could be yourself. Like, I mean, if she didn't buy, you probably wouldn't hold that session, and
I wouldn't be here anymore. I wouldn't be here anymore. That's fact.
That's awesome. Now let's talk about, in the world of creator economy and social media now, there's a thin line between authenticity and profitability. Like, people don't want to be sold to, right? They want to see the authentic person behind the message. So how do you create a balance when it comes to profitability of your message and being authentic? Well, what have you done that in your own situation?
I think for me, I've been lucky not to have to sell to people. I think the demand has always created itself. So when I do what I do, I start recognizing that people start asking me to create those platforms. So I'll give you an example. Maybe back at the beginning of my career, I'd go to speak and have an amazing time and just be a blessing as best as I could. And people started demanding for products. They were like, "Do you have any books?" I was like, "No." "Do you have any podcasts?" I was like, "No." Why don't you have? So, I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, I'll work on that. And then I would go to the events, then have books, right?
Mm,
And then they would say to me, yes, you have a book. Yes, you have a podcast, or you have a book, and your message was great. Do you do mentoring? Because they didn't call it coaching. Do you mentor people? I was like, no, I don't mentor people. How you should be mentoring people. And before so the market always created the demand for me because I was being authentically myself. So
mm,
yes, I do recognize that now a lot of people are very into, well, I got to monetize this thing quick, but monetizing comes from value, and value is created by what the client considers as valuable to them. It's not
mm,
what's valuable to you. It's what's valuable to them,
mm,
right? And if it's valuable to them, inevitably they would start creating demands on the fact that, you know, you need to create something that they can connect with you on a much more personal, basis. And especially when you start doing it for other people. So give you an example. Um, Initially with let's say with my coaching business, there was a time I never had clients, and we all have to recognize that we all start from zero.
yeah.
Everybody starts from zero. Zero is not a bad place. You can only go up. So I never had clients at the time. So I decided, okay, you know what if I could help other people for free and
Mhm.
give them some sort of transformation and get them to tell other people how amazing I was. So I would offer value. I would record it. So let's say, for example, I get the privilege of coaching you at the time, and it was for free. You're not going to say it was for free. You're just going to you're going to talk to me about how amazing it was. I'm going to record that content and then put it up on some social media platform to say, hey, this is what Emeka thinks about Steve Harris's coaching. Why haven't you been? And because Emeka has authority in his own space and field, people will be like, well, if Emeka can go to Steve, then of course I can go to Steve. Do you get
Mm,
what I mean?
mm,
So that started happening. One of the things that I also did, and I learned this from scripture, because I tend to, I don't know, whenever I read scripture, I tend to see business there. Um, there's a scripture that says, after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and men came to see Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised. I'll say that again.
mm,
Men came to see Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised. So the people didn't come for Jesus anymore; they came for Lazarus. So I
mm,
asked myself, how do I get Lazarus's?
mm,
Who are some high profile people I can help? That if I help them, men will come to see Jesus, me, because I raised Lazarus. So I
mm,
started looking for Lazaruses. And my Lazaruses were people who had some level of authority, some level of notoriety, some level of visibility that I would offer value to for free, on the premise that once I offered value to them for free, they would also talk about Jesus who had raised Lazarus.
come on now.
Do you get what I'm saying? So this is what I do. This is why I'm the GOAT. This is why I do what I do.
Oh man, oh man. I knew this was gonna happen. Like it's mind blowing, the things you're sharing. And I was gonna talk about free, and you just mentioned it already, because I think it's something that most of us, out of ego, have come to lose a lot of opportunities because we're not we're too big to start even with doing stuff for free. And you're saying
Mhm.
here now, how you use the free strategy even from a place of authenticity, just to help people, and how that has
Yeah.
opened doors for you. So I this is for someone who's going to be watching this. That you probably have a lot, and I will use the case study for example. I came to Canada in 2015, right? And I had
Right.
some stuff, in Nigeria then. I was looking up to this Lexus, Steve Harris, Jimmy Tewe, and I see what they were doing, and I started my own speaking journey there. I remember one of the first conferences I had was shout out to Mrs. Maureen Oyasole, and she gave me her platform to host an event for free,
Right.
right? And I came to Canada, and why I'm saying this story is because a lot of immigrants watch this podcast. They have track record back home, but they come in
Right.
here, they're starting from scratch, and most of them, out of the fact that, oh, I have this brand and all of that, I don't think I can offer this here, or I can do it for free. Like, no. And there's this ego that gets in the way. And I see that a lot.
Right.
And I tell people, you have to be willing. People, I mean, there's no way someone else, who don't know you before will offer you services, to pay you when you've not even showed them some results,
Yeah.
right? And I share my story a lot. I remember when I came in here, in Canada, I also wanted to start, the speaking and all of that. And a particular organization, share my story on LinkedIn. I'm very big on LinkedIn. And I share my story, and this organization reached out to me and said, "Hey, Emeka, we want you to come talk to new immigrants, And I said, "Yeah, I can come do that, And it was free. Little do I know that the audience and that platform, this was an organization in Toronto, and I did that for free. One of the audience was going to be a manager. She's an all
Right.
immigrant. She was going to be a manager somewhere in one of the government of Canada organization. And guess what? When they were trying to build a retreat, they said we're looking for speakers who is going to talk about career success and stuff like that. And this lady said, "There's a guy I know." I'm like, okay.
Right.
He was at an event where he spoke, about this and all of that, and they reached out to me. Sir, when I wrote my this was something I did for free, but I'm getting
Right.
paid. I remember when I showed my wife the invoice. She was like, "Are you sure they're going to pay you this for 1 hour?"
Yeah.
She's like, and this is because I was willing to offer them for free. So Steve has shared that even going free doesn't mean that you're losing value, doesn't mean you're wasting your
Right.
time. It's an investment you're making in your calling, in your career, in your business, in your message. So thank you for sharing that, Steve, as well. I want to take you because I remember the time I saw you in Kajabi. I hope
Right.
this is not a sponsorship or anything, but I want to take you on that Kajabi, assignment or gig, because
Right.
it trended. I saw it. I was like, wow. And I know Kajabi to be a very big platform. And I saw Steve on
Yeah.
the platform. I was like, okay. So now I want to talk about how were you able to position yourself? I don't know if you're on that platform, maybe you're a subscriber, but how did that happen such that you got such a platform to invite you to come speak on their platform? Talk to us about how that happened.
That's a great question. And thank you for the compliment. Yes, I am a subscriber. I've used Kajabi for maybe 6 years, going on 7.
Hmm.
But the really deep answer to your question, bro, let me tell you what the deep answer is. Is I asked. I just asked.
Wow.
That's what I did. I wish I could tell you something deeper than that, but I just asked. So what I did was, the first time I'd ever attended their conference, I had come from Nigeria to attend. I flew the miles to attend. I think my wife wasn't interested in the conference. She was just chilling at the hotel. She was just happy to let's just go. So, um, and I remember being on, at the platform. And no disrespect to any of the amazing thought leaders, they had Brendan Burchard. They had some really amazing people, and please forgive me, there were very few of their speakers that impressed me.
Hmm.
Very few of them impressed me. Um, I was like, that's it, right? Um, and then I realized also at the time they didn't have a lot of diversity in terms of the speakers.
Come on now.
So
Hmm.
there wasn't any black person, scratch that. There wasn't any African person, scratch that. There wasn't any. It was just pretty much one demographic. But it was an amazing event, and I took a picture at the end of the event. I stood on stage and I took a picture, and I said that I was going to be the first. If I couldn't be the first black person, I'd be the first African, and if I couldn't be the first African, I'll be the first Nigerian who speaks on that platform.
Hmm.
And it left such an impression on me because this is where positioning comes in, because I need the listeners to recognize this, that sometimes it's not about how good you are, it's about how well positioned you are.
Hmm.
So i thought about it and I said, no disrespect to the speakers who in my mind I was better than. I realized that they were better positioned than me.
Hmm.
I may be a better speaker, but they were better positioned, right?
Hmm.
And that perhaps was what eventually began to inform my decision to leave Nigeria and move to the United States, because it was about positioning.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. There was a time that Kajabi invited me to join them as a speaker on a virtual platform, I think this was before COVID or something like that. Something like that. but I was
Yeah.
invited to be a speaker, and they were having a virtual conference. I was in Benin facilitating a training for an organization for a bank, and the internet was bad. Oh, Emeka, I cried
God.
because it was such a huge breakthrough, so to speak. And I couldn't log in from my hotel. The internet was crappy. They were like, "Oh, Steve, we can't hear you. Steve, we can't hear you. Steve, we can't hear you. Oh my God, we lost." And they continued without me.
Whoa.
I kept trying to log in. I couldn't. I cried there. I cried for like 3 days, and that began to inform my decision to move. But back to the event. So after taking that picture, I made a mental note that I needed to be there. Now I don't know. Everybody's walk with God is different. My walk with God is different. I started. I felt led to reach out to them because they've got a community, Facebook community, and the whole 9 yards. There are lots of people there. But I don't know why. I felt led to send an email. So, because of the previous conversations we'd had about having me as a virtual speaker, I had some email addresses. Now, to send that email, to press send, Emeka, that was the hardest thing I could ever do. My inferiority complex kicked in. Like, first off, I'm Nigerian. Nigerians have a bad rap. Oh my God, what if they don't? And what if they tell me no? I'll be so embarrassed and I'll be this. But God was like, send it. So I wrote the letter. I was like, listen, hey, just to let you guys know that I've moved to the United States and I'm available for any speaking opportunities that are available. I would love to be a part of it. If there's any opening, I'd really love to be a part of it. I was like, it took me 2 days to press send. I could have said it was in my draft. So I was just looking at things like, and this is Steve Harris. I've got a reputation for ruthlessness, execution, but my imposter syndrome, because we all deal with it. My imposter syndrome, my fear, my insecurities, limiting beliefs. What am I going to say to all these white people? What if they say no? Yada yada yada. It took me 2 days. Eventually, I sent it. I was like, yeah, send. Whatever that happens, they're probably not even going to respond to me anyway. So I just started thinking about all the worst things that could happen. I kid you not. Less than an hour later, this lady responds and says, "Wow, Steve, that's amazing that we're actually planning the next Kajabi conference. Can we get on a call?" I was like, just like that. Just like that. And
Come
then I
on.
booked the call. I booked the Zoom meeting. And between you and I can't tell you what I said, but I can tell you that whatever I said, it was like this lady was jumping. She was jumping from excitement about what I was telling her.
Come
I
on
was like,
now.
this is smoke. You've not seen fire. I'm not, you're getting high on smoke. I've not even brought the fire. And it dawned on me how, with all sense of humility, how gifted and blessed I am. And this woman said, she said, "Steve, it will be an honor to have you." They flew me there, put me inside a hotel, did all those things. And you know me, I'm not, this people will be humble, don't talk. I'm like, humble fire, you people, man. I made noise about it because, Emeka, check this out. Your perception creates your positioning.
Come on now.
Your perception creates your positioning, and your positioning determines your pricing. Right? I'll say this again. Your perception creates your positioning. Your positioning creates your pricing. I think a lot of thought leaders do it backwards. They think by increasing their pricing, they will increase their perception of positioning. No. If you increase your perception, it will change your positioning. Or if you increase your positioning, it will change your perception. If you change your perception, it will change your pricing. So the moment they saw me on platforms, and I was talking about the fact that, here I am speaking at this platform that, with global thought leaders and blah, 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 blah. Guess what? My positioning went high, perception followed, pricing followed automatically.
Come on now.
So to be honest, I wish I could tell you it was something deeper that I wrote this amazing chat GP. I didn't do. I just sent them an email. Say, please, if you people are looking for this, I'm amazing. This experience. This is what I've done over the last XYZ. Check what I've done. This is where, it's a track record. So now I started talking about the things I've done in Africa. I'm one of Africa's, I'm undoubtedly one of Africa's leading coaches, voices, and it's true. You get what I'm saying? And besides, even if it's not true, they don't have any way of measuring it. You get what I'm saying? Beyond that, do you get what I'm saying? Right? But because I've been very deliberate with my journey, for everything I do, I'll put it in the press, I'll put it online, put it on papers. The problem that many of us are having who are listening to me is you don't have proof
Hmm.
of what you've done. Maybe you know you've done it too, but the world don't know. So every time I would get into a conference and I would speak or be invited, I would put it on the press. Steve Harris headlining
Hmm.
this event, or Steve Harris as a guest speaker at this event. When I
By
do it
yourself.
before
What? Wow.
myself, nobody's doing. I'm doing it by myself. I'm my own
Wow.
hype
Not the
man.
organization doing it. It's you doing
I'm
it.
doing it for myself. It's positioning.
Come
Do you get
on.
what I mean? Everything that I did that I felt was newsworthy, I put it in the news.
Hmm.
Even if nobody was reading it, I'm the one who's putting it out there. So that when they type my name on Google, Steve Harris, they won't say, "Oh, sorry, did you mean?"
Hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying? So I put it out there. So by the time she looked at my body of work, I had things to show her. She was like, "Steve, it will be an honor. It will be a privilege for us to have you on this platform." And it was a dream come true.
Wow.
So that's to be honest, that's what I did.
Wow. You dropped a lot of gems, and I have to, for those who didn't catch, I'm going to say some things that Steve has said, and I think you have to go back to listen to from when he started the response to this question. But some things are very important that I need to emphasize them. Number one, that the Steve, and Steve, I'm just going to put you on the spot here, is the
Yeah,
Steve we all know, and we revere in Nigeria, still had to deal with imposter syndrome.
yeah,
So you have to know that no matter your level, no matter where you are, you still have to deal with these things and still show up. Like you're gonna say, "Oh, imposter syndrome. I'm afraid." You have to show up. So even no matter how the status where you are, you still have to deal with these things. So Steve
yeah,
had to show up. He also mentioned about location, right?
yeah,
For some people, I told me I was leaving to Canada. Like, what are you doing in Canada? I knew that I tell people that you can't change a system by being in the same system. You have to go to a system that is working to get the
yeah.
concept and what is working there to change your system. And I know
Mhm.
how to move, right? And I can't tell you what it has done in my life and my career and my family. But he said he had to change location. Now, imagine if he was sending that email from Nigeria. I'm not disrespect to
No
Nigeria,
disrespect, of course. Absolutely.
but I can tell you that there's a perception that would be accorded to being in that particular location. So for some listening to this, watching this, you have the means. I have people who say, "I do, but I don't think what if I lose?" I'm like, there's much more out there,
Yeah,
right? And he said also that he had to realize that he has value to offer. Now, some people will say, what I have, what I've done, I don't think it will count even in these places or these big platforms. And we believe to the stories or the victories we've had. Just like David. David
yeah,
said, I have dealt with beasts, I've dealt with lions.
yeah.
Goliath, you're gonna go down. Now, some of us
Right.
here have stories. You're undervaluing it because you feel like this platform is so big. But Steve said, excuse me, he had to share those stories that he had, those successes that he has,
Yeah,
and that was really. But he said it was the smoke, and they were already, So
yeah,
for us, for you listening and watching, you already have success. You have something to offer. You're thinking that is too small, but do you know what's going to change when you share it? He also said again that you have to ask. I think this is a big one for many of us. I struggle with it as well.
bless
That
you.
are they going to listen to me if I ask? Right? Are they going to, buy into? Oh, why should I even ask? But I think this is something, and it's an eye opener for me as well. That sometimes you
Yeah,
don't wait for them to come to you; you go to them,
yeah,
right? So, and then you said also that be willing to invest in your promotion. This is what,
yeah.
and it's a good concept. Like I thought it was the publishers or the host
No,
you were the one investing in it because you understand the power of positioning. Hmm.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing all of that, Steve. It's so important that I had to emphasize that. Now, Steve, before we go, as we wrap things up, what are if you're going to share one insight or one tip over the years that's going to help a listener or someone who's going to be watching this on who's looking to monetize their message, what would be the insights that you wish you heard or you had 5-10 years ago that you have now that would help them?
That's a tough one. Because there's so many different things that I could say. Um, I would say invest in your positioning. Invest in your positioning.
Hmm.
Give you a real example. So I'll give you a real example. I'm still working on this, by the way. So it's not perfect in any means. So I'm still working on this. So it's a little sensitive, but I'll share it anyway. And I say this from a platform of someone who is successful in his own right. But anyway, I'll say it anyway. So one day, in fact, okay, I'll say it anyway. So I was invited to speak at a conference, virtual conference, by a friend of mine, Kwame. Kwame is Ghanaian, and Kwame was hosting this amazing conference, and he was like, "Oh, Steve, I'd love you to be there. I want to bring the best speakers in Africa to be a part of this thingamajiggy." Right? So he had me. He reached out to me. I was like, "Yes." Reached out to some other people. Then he now said he was bringing in Vusi,
Hmm.
Themikweyo. So,
You know, it came to my mind when you were.
he's my guy. This is my guy. I love Vusi. He's my guy, right? So he said, "Oh, he's bringing Vusi," and so he said, "Me, Vusi, some other people." And for the final day, it was me and Vusi. And he said something to me that offended me. He didn't know he offended. He just offended me. I was like, "Steve, I know you're amazing, but I want you to be like, I want you to be, I want you to be, I want Vusi to be the last person. So I want you to be like John the Baptist, like Vusi, the forerunner to Vusi." I was like, "Nigga, no, no, you didn't. No, you did not." Right?
Wow.
And I know what he was saying, and he said it. He said it honestly, and he said it because Vusi had better positioning than I did, and I'm going there, going somewhere.
Hmm.
So he said, "I want Vusi to be the last, so I want you to come before Vusi." So it's like John the Baptist and Jesus. I'm like, "Nigga, who you calling John the Baptist? I'm the Jesus of this game," right? And so we get into the thingy, the conference, and I said to myself, "This is me." And I think that with all sense of humility, there's a level of ego that is necessary for you to be the best in the world.
Hmm.
Um, you must, if you don't have it, then it's okay. There's a reason that the best footballers in the world are Ronaldo and Messi. Their egos are off the chain. Every other person doesn't have their ego, doesn't have their ambition. So it's okay to be content with the level you're in. But if you want to be number one, you can't do it by being, let me use the word, nice to everybody. And I don't mean niceness isn't a bad thing.
Hmm.
So I said to myself, this conference, nobody's going to remember anybody who came before me and anybody who comes after me. The only person they're going to remember is Steve Harris. It was deliberate that I don't care who came before me, and I don't care who's coming after me. The only person people are going to talk about is Steve Harris after this conference.
Hmm.
Bro, killed it. Oh, no, you don't understand. I
Hmm.
killed it. By the time my brother came after me, because we're friends, we chatted everything. By the time my brother came after me, people are like, he doesn't have anything to say. I was like, "Oh, like Steve said, like Steve said." And somebody now dropped in the comments, "Oh, Vusi has been Steved." I say that with all sense of humility,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And no doubt I came out of that event being the undisputed amongst everybody else. But now going to the second part. So I now have to critique and say, okay, why did he say this? He said it because Vusi is better positioned than me. It is more likely, right? And this is the amazing job Vusi has done. I am more likely to see Vusi's content streamed on certain platforms that even me are not yet on.
Hmm.
Let me say this the way I want to say it, please, with all sense of respect. I am more likely to see white people post Vusi's content than post my content.
Hmm.
So I sat down and said, okay, you know what? Vusi, Steve Harris. The issue is not who's the better speaker. The issue now is who's the better positioned speaker.
Speaker.
So I looked, real talk, I looked at my page on Instagram. I looked at Vusi's page. Vusi's page was very curated, very deliberate, very intentional. Vusi had only 50 posts.
Hmm.
I looked at my page, I had like 3,000, 4,000. Just it was a smorgasbord of my life. It was just me living life and posting content, which is okay.
Hmm.
But when I looked at it and I said to myself, if anybody wants to make a decision as to who they're going to pick for a global speaking or whatchamacallit company, they'll pick him over me. Because before they find me, they'll
Hmm.
see me chilling here, they'll see me talking here, they'll see me with my family, and all those things are great. But it was so mumbled. Do you know what
Hmm.
I did? I archived over 3,000 or 4,000 of my posts. If you go on my page now, you'll probably see maybe maximum 100 posts.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, I had to do that.
Hmm.
I had to do that. So now my content is deliberate. So when I post videos, the editing and the graphics that are involved in my video content is next level.
Hmm.
So I noticed that, for example, there's certain platforms that Vusi has been on, maybe like Tom Bilyeu's platform, right? Tom Bilyeu has millions of followers. I haven't been on that platform yet, and I know it costs money. Do you get what I mean? It does. It's not cheap. It's not because it's not like no disrespect to you. You and I can have this invitation because we're friends, we're brothers. You can say, "Oh, Steve, I'd love to have you on my platform," and I'm like, "Game, no biggie. I'll be there. I didn't charge you. You didn't charge me." But there's a level that you're going to get to, Emeka, that people are going to pay you to feature on your platform because you have positioning, your perception is great, your mileage is great, your stats are large. Do you get what I'm saying? They would pay. So now I'm getting a lot of people in my DM who host podcasts to say, "Oh, we would like to have you on this podcast, but to feature is $6,000." So now I'm recognizing that I need to have a bigger budget for my promotion
Hmm.
because that's going to affect my positioning. So that's why I said to you, you remember before we went live, I said I get requests for podcasts. I turn them all down.
Hmm.
Because if you can't meet my positioning goals or my perception goals or how it's going to either get me to a wider audience. So for example, you literally have one of the top 10 podcasts in Canada in personal development. It makes sense to me to be on your platform.
Hmm.
Right? Because it will introduce me to a heck of a lot of Canadian people in Canada. It will increase my positioning in Canada. It will increase my perception in Canada. It makes sense. But no disrespect, if you're running a random podcast somewhere in Nigeria, no disrespect, he is not going to give me the mileage I'm looking for. No disrespect.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to reach
Hmm.
Nigerians. I'm trying to reach the world.
Hmm.
So when I saw that, I had to take the step back that even after my ego was happy that, oh, I was the best speaker, the most memorable, but then my brother here is the better positioned.
Hmm.
I asked myself, real talk, no just no. I like to keep it real, and I'm sorry that we've pretty much gone over time,
No,
but
no,
we'll
no.
keep it real. So I had a conversation with my brothers who are other coaches and public speakers, Jimmy Terry, Bankole Williams. I said, hey boys, Pastor Podru, Covenant Nation invited Vusi to come and speak, and we are here. Are we okay? What are we doing wrong? And the answer was, is our brother is more positioned than we are. Real talk.
Hmm.
Real talk. If you want Vusi to come, Vusi came to Nigeria. I know how much they paid him. Vusi came to, forget covenants. He came to Nigeria from some other thing. They paid him $30,000. They flew him. They flew his PA. I can see the shock in your eyes. They flew him. They flew his PA first class. Put them in they put him in the best hotel in Lagos, right? They paid him his full money, complete. I know the people who brought him. That's how much they paid him. But if we, the gods of the industry, while we are in Nigeria, we cannot charge that money. They will not give us. They'll be like, nah, 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 Steve. Even if you charge them 5 million, they'll be dragging you like, nah, no, Steve, 5 million, But they paid Lucy $30,000.
Hmm.
What's the difference? Positioning affects perception. Perception affects pricing. Chicken out.
Wow. Steve, I must thank you for being vulnerable to share that, because I know it took a lot to share that, but I think it was really important that you share that for us, because it's an eye opener for a lot of us and a lot of people who are going to be watching it.
Yeah.
And what you've said is so powerful. Like, knowing that your positioning is so important And it affects not just your perception alone, it affects the amount, the price you command. And I see that so much. That's why, you know, I am very intentional at even platforms, and I'm still up and coming in Canada. But
You're doing great. You're doing great.
I remember recently I went to get an anchor on event. They were invited me to moderate, right? I've started going to, you know, panelists now, but this one was to moderate. And I read, and these are people that know me in this city of, I live in Saskatchewan, a very
Right.
cold region in Canada. And the
All Canada is cold as far as I'm concerned, bro.
so this is, if you know the cold, this in Saskatchewan we get to as high as -50.
Wow.
So people say, "How you living here?" I mean, I think I love it here, you know.
Right.
But I was somewhere and they read the profile, and someone came to me after the event and said, wait. I know you as Emeka, but I didn't know this part of you that you've spoken to, you know, the place of like Department of National Defense. You've spoken to
Right.
Health Canada. Like, how did you get on those platforms?
Yeah.
Positioning. And what you're saying today, if someone can get it, you are doing all that you can. You've invested in your expertise. You've invested in the, beauty your message and all of that. And you're probably having some followers, but you're not positioned right. I mean, this is the wake up call. I have to go and clean my house too. But really, thank you so much for sharing that, Steve. I'm going to my last final three questions. You can answer it in one word, or you can emphasize on the word. And now this is the question. Can you share a memorable aha moment when you realize the potential of your message to truly impact others and generate income? What was that aha moment? It could be a day or event.
I think for me, it was the day it dawned on me. I think for my signature coaching program, Mastering the Business of Your Talent. And when I realized that people outside Nigeria were willing to pay me for what I thought was regular, simple conversations, I started asking myself that I mean, think about it. We see the Tony Robbins, we see the Russell Brunsons, we see all the Bernard Burchards, all the Myron Goldmans and Goldens and all these other thought leaders. And I say that, you know, if Nigerians can pay Americans for their contents, then Americans can pay Nigerians for their contents.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the moment I recognized that, I started attracting a lot more people outside Nigeria who are willing to pay me for my services. I was like, oh my God, I have no business being poor.
Hmm.
I have no business being poor. And so yeah, so I mean, Tony Robbins literally had this webinar. I think he calls it "Unlock the Power Within." It was virtual. Emeka, do you know how many people were at that thingamajiggy? 85,000 people.
Hmm.
They all paid minimum $400. 85,000 people by $400. And it was a 3-day event. Tony was not at the. Tony did 1 hour day one.
Was it the one that had the big screen?
Yeah, the big screen one. He did
Wow.
1 hour, 1.5 hours in day one, and 1.5 hours in day three, and the rest he filled with other amazing speakers. But 85,000 people paid a minimum of $400 to attend that virtually. So the moment I recognized that investing in technology can help me reach the world, no, scratch that. Investing in technology can make the world reach me.
Hmm.
I recognized that I needed to keep investing in as much tech as necessary to make sure my funnels are fantastic. So right now, I'll give you an example. I have a funnel for the African markets and I have a funnel for the global markets because the contexts are different.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So I'm curating both. It's like nurturing twins, two children. One lives in America, one lives in Nigeria. You have it's different. Context is different.
Hmm.
So the moment I recognized that I could get paid by people all over the world, I started going hard on that. And for me, that's fantastic.
Also, next question. What is one unexpected lesson you have learned on your journey to monetizing your message that you wish you knew when you started?
It's not about your message; it's about your market.
Yeah, that's true. And last question, what is one actionable tip or resources you will recommend to our listeners, to those who are going to be watching or listening, who are eager to start monetizing their own message right away?
Take massive action. Do the thing that scares you the most. Do the thing that scares you the most. Right.
Mm,
I think a lot of us creators are lost in our own minds. So we get caught up with that quest for perfection. We're trying to, dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure things are perfect. Get all your ducks in a row. And perfection is proof of procrastination. You're trying to be perfect because you're
mm,
procrastinating. You're procrastinating because you're afraid.
mm,
Right. If you take that big, bold step towards, like for me, it was Kajabi. I could have decided to get Kajabi's attention by commenting on their Instagram page, commenting on their Facebook group, chitter chatting, making sure that I'm active. But the thing that scared me was sending an email to them to say I deserve to be on your platform and this is why.
mm,
That single action changed my life. So when
mm.
I'm pitter pattering or spending too much time on the things that don't matter, I just say to myself, what's the thing that what am I scared of? Okay, I'm scared that if I do this, they'll say no. Oh yeah, well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's hear them say no. Let's just do it. At least you
Mm,
can say you tried. You can say you tried.
tried.
You get what I
Mm,
mean? So do the thing that scares you. Don't baby steps are for babies. You're not a
mm.
baby. Take that big, massive action that scares the Jesus out of you and do it anyway. So that's what I'd say.
Do it anyway. Thank you so much, Steve. This was this was was a masterclass on its own. And I thank you for sharing so openly and so vulnerably as well. Really appreciate it. Um, we're going to wrap it up here. What is the last thing that you want to leave on this podcast? And I know that I'm going to share there are a lot of things, Steve is, doing on social media platform. You can follow him on Instagram. You can follow him on, I think you're on LinkedIn as well, right? Because I've seen you come
Yeah,
on LinkedIn.
I, I am. I really don't use it much. I don't understand it yet. So, but yeah, but
Right.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at I am Steve Harris.
Steve Harris, yeah. And also we'll have all the links on the show notes on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple. Thank you so much, Steve. What is the last word you want to leave with the audience before we go?
Share, subscribe to this podcast. Share this podcast. It's absolutely amazing. It's really good. It's got great content. Emeka's fantastic, as you can tell. He's a great um, interviewer. He's got great capacity. He brings the best, and I am the best. Subscribe, share. Leave a review. Leave a review. If this was really good for you, don't be a joker. Leave a review. That's what I'd
Thank
say.
you. Thank you for that. That's the one. That's the first for a guest. Thank you for for sharing that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you for our listeners, those who are going to be listening on Spotify or Apple. Thank you for being a part of our community, growing. I think the last time I checked, yeah, I'm getting to people from different countries coming in. See, there's a country that came in recently. I was like, I haven't heard about this country before. Is this since? This said Lucia or something. I can't remember the name, but it was a very interesting question. Thank you for those listening from that country. Thank you for being a part of our podcast. If you're on YouTube, please do not fail to hit that subscribe button. We're going to be bringing more content your way. And until I see you in the next episode, remember, your growth is personal. No one is responsible for your personal growth but you. Stay blessed and bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you love this episode, share it with your friends on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our episode, and give us a rating. This will help our podcast get more visibility to those who don't know about this podcast. Remember, your growth is personal. No one is responsible for your personal growth but you. Stay blessed.